Hey, welcome to the Is This Heaven mini-series podcast. I'm joined here by Jesse D. Young. Jesse, what's up, bud?
What's up? How are you, Carl?
Doing great. And Sean Lord. Sean, how are you?
I'm good, Carl. Good to see you.
Awesome. I'm Carl. Hey, we're in a series at church talking about heaven called Is This Heaven?
Is this heaven?
Yeah, Jess, you're preaching the three installments of this series, and we just want to have a conversation around heaven, some stuff that we're not going to hit on the weekend, some questions that we have, some questions that you might have, and just jump into this concept, this idea, the theology of heaven, and we'll probably have some laughs along the way. So, Jess, when you were planning this series, kind of what was the genesis of your heart out of this is why I'd like to teach on this?
Sure. It struck me, our culture, actually, we think about heaven in certain moments, like if somebody dies, we're like, they're going to heaven, obviously. Or maybe you stay up at night and you're just something struck you and you think about it. But besides that, we don't think about heaven, especially in the church, very much. Today, what I'm hearing in the church so much more is it's not about, go to heaven when you die. It's about make the most of your life here on earth. Yeah. And at the same time, if I was the devil, I would try to get people focused on their life now, not thinking about what's going to happen later. Because if with a robust theology of heaven, you're going to have a level of confidence here on earth that you wouldn't have if you're just thinking about your life on earth.
Yeah.
You're going to do things differently here because you've got this confidence in what heaven's like. But I just think, personally, I think our culture and I think church culture is actually too soft on heaven in 2025 compared to maybe where it was in the 80s or 90s, where it's all about heaven. We got to escape this world. And that's not what heaven is. Heaven is not about escape. Heaven is about actually how a view of heaven invades our life today and how it makes an impact.
Dude, you just said something that's so brilliant. And Sean, I'd love to hear what you think about this. But it's that idea of get us so focused on this life.
Sure.
And what's right in front of us. We'll try not to quote obscure philosophers. I'm talking to Sean, okay? But C.S. Lewis, he's not an obscure philosopher, right? But C.S. Lewis in Screwtape Letters, there's that point where the character, he's I just got to get this guy. He's in the library, and he's if I just get him distracted about lunch, then he's not going to spend time thinking about the enemy who, in Lewis's book, is God. And there is something about that where let's just focus on right in front of us. Sean, I'm halfway teasing you, but Sean leads our students and kids across all of our campuses. Super brilliant guy, but you had a degree in philosophy and you're a really deep thinker. So for you, when you hear heaven, this big conceptual idea of heaven, as Jesse kicked it off the week one in the series, what is the first thing that comes to mind for you?
Well, it's interesting. I think something else C.S. Lewis said, which I'm glad I'm allowed to talk about him.
No, he is.
Now, every time you mention someone, now I can
that's
start
the
quoting
person.
them.
Yeah, that's the person. The one book I've read.
But I think about what you said, Jesse, around people see heaven as escapism, and we don't really think about it very much, and we get so focused on the here and now. Yeah. I think having a good theology of what heaven is gives us a fuller vision of what heaven is and also what living on earth now means.
Yes.
And C.S. Lewis talks about if you're viewing heaven as escapism when you're here, you get a lesser version of life on earth. And I think you'd also have a lesser version of what heaven is.
Say it again for me. Say it again.
So if you have a lesser, I think when you're trying to view heaven just as an escape pod or just like an emergency hatch, you're going to get a less beautiful vision, I think, of what heaven is and a less true vision of what it is. And you'll also have a lesser experience here on earth because you're trying to avoid earth. Does that make sense?
You're just trying to run away, so you don't really care about earth.
It's a lesser experience of both of those things. Whereas if you embrace it, it's not just I have a better version of what heaven is, and so I'm still escaping through a better version. No, if you have a true vision of what heaven is, you're going to live differently now.
But that's as a Christian, right?
True.
Joe Schmo, who's what does he care? I think we get so worked up about it as followers of Christ.
Sure.
It's this. It's the finish line.
Sure.
Right? Like there's
For us.
it's like, oh, that's what I just got to get to heaven. I get to see Jesus. He explains all these things to me. Regular person, like they don't give a rip about. I don't think
They
the
don't until
theological
they do. They don't until they do, right?
Yep,
like
yep.
you've officiated memorial services and funerals. I have, and it's like all it takes is a young person to pass away.
Yeah.
In like, I think the average Joe Schmo average guy is sitting in his bed at night wondering, will I go to heaven when I die? And there's a ton of misinformation out there because like basically culture says, hey, if you're a quote unquote good person,
Right.
then you go to heaven when you die. And what that is, like, you're going to float on clouds. You're going to play harps.
Charmin baby's
right,
there.
exactly.
Doing his
And honestly, it's like, this is kind of boring. And I would rather be like, I feel like songs are like, hey, I'd rather be in hell with my friends than in heaven with the nerds.
Dude,
and like,
for sure.
And so I think people do think about heaven, just not over the course of regular everyday life, because we're pretty busy and we've got stuff to do. I think like heaven has been positioned as escapism, like one of two things. It's either escapism or it's unnecessary. And the escapism is like, hey, the world is so bad, it's just getting worse and worse and worse. And one day Jesus is going to come take us all. He's going to rapture us up. He's going to take us to heaven. He's going to burn the world. You don't want to be there when it burns, and so take you out. And that's actually not what the Bible teaches. I mean, that's what we're talking about on the weekends. That comes more from Plato than it does from the Bible.
Yep.
But then there's this other spectrum that's like, we actually don't need a heaven when we die because we can create a version of heaven here on earth. And like, one of the things that I've been struck by, and one of the reasons I wanted to do this series is like, I don't know if you guys have played around with ChatGPT, AI.
No, I believe in Jesus.
Sure. This is almost the Antichrist. I had to type in 666.
Yeah,
to get access
that was the entry
to
code.
ChatGPT.
It was weird, yeah.
But,
What version are you using?
Yeah, 100%.
they ChatGPT has given us like almost godlike abilities of what we know, what we can figure out, and what we do. Like it just, I mean, like I could put in a topic and it would write a sermon for me. It would write emails for me. It could do just so many things. And at the same time, like we're in a time of unprecedented like knowledge, unprecedented resources, unprecedented safety. And at the same time, like there are these soul level issues that people are realizing like, our lives don't feel any better, even though like materially our lives are so much better than they've ever been. But like we have these real soul wrestle questions. And so this idea of trying to create a heaven on earth, I think that that's what, and I'd love to hear your all's thoughts on this. That's what we thought in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s. I think marketers were trying to get us to believe that, like, hey, if you just buy this stuff, then eventually you can experience heaven on earth.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting, like, when people wrote TV shows or movies about the future in the 80s and 90s, they were all like, it's going to be amazing, all this technology, it's going to be great. And it's like, there are so many zombie shows out there talking about like the end of the world. Like Civil War was another movie where it's like the future now. You thought it was good?
I love that movie.
It's a great movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Great movie.
Agree to disagree. But you think now when people think about the future, they actually think things are actually trending worse than they're trending better.
Like I'm still
there's
waiting
a
for my flying
psychological
car
shift.
from the Jetsons.
Sure.
But all I see is Walking Dead.
Right.
It's like
Yes.
no. This
Yes.
is only getting.
So
this
good,
is
Carl.
only going backwards. It's not going forward, dude. That's I think back to like even some of the things about heaven. You said you brought up Plato, but it's like we're standing on other people's ideological ideas of heaven and what their time spent, what their lived experience was, and then it's like, oh, this is what great grandma thought about heaven. So now I'm inheriting that.
Sure,
like you think to like old Negro spirituals, right? In their time, they wanted to fly away because they were slaves.
Sure.
So it was a true escapism from this hell, hell on earth that they were experiencing. But to your point, when we live in this like consumer driven, you have everything at your fingertips world, like I've got everything. Why do I need to look forward to the next thing? It feels almost like you said, John. It's like I can't value either, because it's like I got everything. I got everything I need right now.
Materially, yes, but at a soul level, there's this existential angst.
Yeah.
That like teenagers are feeling. They don't even. And Sean, I'd love to hear
Yeah.
you just like some of the stats you know about teenagers, what they're walking through. But it's like they don't know how to verbalize it. They just know how they feel, and how they feel is like, this is not okay.
Well, I want to go back to what you're saying around technology and this kind of inherent promise that as we get more and more advanced in technology, it will lead to human flourishing.
Sure.
And like there was articles written, I think in the 50s, as technology started ramping up a lot, that they were worried what they would do with all their free time. And then as you got more and more, we found more busy things to do. But that's what you mentioned like what I was saying earlier. I think that, again, I think most of technology is promising more leisure, but not more life, right? So it's like, it's about how you can relax more, how you can, it's always about how you can be, in a lot of ways, lazier, and I would argue less human. Like, so you're giving away all these things. I don't want to do the dishes. I don't want to have to cook meals anymore. And like technology is going to slowly take all these things. But we're now like with AI, we're slowly taking more and more things away. Do you like what actually makes me a human being? It makes me live. And it's, the Bible doesn't talk about creating heaven on earth in the sense of like leisure.
Sure. But
the kingdom of God on earth, it does talk a lot about. I'm sure we'll get into that about like the kingdom of God coming, but it's not a life of leisure. I think it's still, it says in
it's a life of sacrifice, right?
Exactly. And I think the new heaven and the new earth, it's a city. It's like, and I think that there will be business. There will be things that we're doing every day. And whereas now we're trying to create a utopia without all those things.
But that doesn't sound, again, non-Christian person. That's not me, but but like church very much.
Yeah.
Right. But like non-Christian person, or you and your wife, right? Like you guys will plan a trip, right? Like, and you want to, very few people go on vacation to like go and work and do like, you know what I mean? Like I don't go to Spain so I can, I don't know, build houses or whatever, maybe on a mission trip. But you know what I'm saying? So like
You chose Spain?
Yeah, well, I just love Spain, and I'm always telling our
build
missions
houses?
pastor to do a trip to Spain so I can go there. It's a whole nother thing. But listen, so like, why would I be interested in going somewhere? I've worked 75, 80 years on this planet, then I die, right? Now you're telling me I got to go work some more?
Yeah. So I'd say, have you ever had a moment in your life where you were doing something? So you mentioned a mission trip. I've probably never felt more fulfilled than when I'm building a house in Tijuana. So I've gone on house, I know you have as well. That you think to so you said, talk to someone who's maybe not a Christian, who's there. I don't want to go to heaven, work the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So I would argue, so in the beginning, in the Garden of Eden, there was work in the very beginning in the Garden of Eden. So work was before the fall of man. And so you could argue it's the original intention that God had to co-labor with him. And we're made in the image of God, and God himself worked. He chose to work and to create in those 6 days. And I think we can find our most fulfillment in that. I think that with sin entering the world, I do think work was corrupted and work changed. And now, like, most people do hate work.
Yeah.
But we can all probably have a moment where, like, especially if you have the privilege, I think, to be able to have a job that you love and enjoy and feel inspired by. It doesn't feel, it's the whole adage, right? Like, do something you love, you'll never work a day in your life. I think in heaven, you find out what love really is. And you find out like what love really looks like. And that's every day of your life is consumed by that. And work, because we're not cursed by sin anymore, isn't a direct overflow of this love that you're receiving, this love that you're spreading to other people, and that you're receiving in a community. And that was the original intention of work. Does that make sense?
I love the idea of like uncorrupted work, because it's like what we experience today is like maybe there's a glimpse of uncorrupted work, maybe, but still a little bit tarnished by sin, tarnished by the brokenness of the world. That, like random non-Christian dude could acknowledge like there's something broken about the world. But you go like those moments that we've had of fulfillment.
Yes.
And like I'm in my sweet spot. Like it's a what's the movie? The guy that runs. He's like when I'm running. Yeah, when I'm running, I feel God's pleasure. Is that the quote?
Yeah.
And it's just like when you have those moments that's what heaven's going to feel like. So work in heaven is going to feel like the thing that you go about doing, that you're just like, it feels like everything works. It feels like everything in my life is good. It feels like, if you're a Christian, God smiles at you while this is happening.
Yeah.
That's what work will feel like forever into eternity. And like moments like that, we could do like,
Yeah.
we've had those moments where like we walk out of a meeting and we're just like, we were figuring it out. We were all tracking together. We were aligned. This is going to make a difference. And it's like, I could have sat there in that meeting room for forever.
Yeah.
Like, that's what the eternity of heaven is. It's not like this eternity of we're just going to be doing things that God tells us we should be doing
But
in heaven.
We're feeling it in the way that God intended for us to feel it.
Yeah.
Even like not at work, like but work. Like as you were saying that, I was thinking about a couple of weeks ago. My lawn was a disaster, right? And I didn't turn on my sprinklers because I don't know how to do it. So then, I finally.
So what did you do?
What? I called somebody to come turn it on, and he just turned a knob, and I handed him like $200. I felt taken advantage of, but like either way. But so then I'm like, I go mow the lawn because he can't come for another week, right? And I'm mowing the lawn, and clearly I'm not like an outdoorsy handy person, but like I felt this thing, like, and I mean it was a legit like spiritual moment because I was like, and it's funny you just said that, like God's smiling on you, and it's like, and I'm out there by myself, and I'm like, oh, it just felt the love of God in this, it's really, really interesting. So putting together what you both are saying, I'm like, yeah, I could see that in just in the mundane things of life, where we could experience God.
Well, and I think you get a glimpse of that. You have the Holy Spirit that dwells within you, right? And so you're getting that feedback. But imagine when you're in the presence of God for eternity, getting that immediate feedback of you doing something that you love and enjoy, and usually it's out of something that you've been gifted in, that God created in you for you to experience that. Like I think of, so my dad was a roofer. He hated roofing. My whole life, he told me, just don't roof, please. And then he made me roof from the time I was 13.
Yeah, for sure.
But just to teach me how bad it was. But like, it's really hard work. Yet there was this one office building that every time we drive by it, he had to stop and show it to me. It was like he was so proud of it. He was proud of this one thing. And it's like he gets this glimpse of it. It's like hard. It was the hard work, but it's like you, and I'm sure even you writing this series, like you probably had a moment where you're like, I love this. Like I love the idea of like,
like one moment. It's just like, how do you talk about heaven in like eternity in 3 weeks? Oh gosh.
Well, it's like everyone has that one part of their job.
Sure.
That as much as you might hate, if you're listening to this and you hate your job, I'm so sorry. But like you probably have this one moment where you're like, I wonder if my job could just be this. Like just this one part where I get to help someone, I see this like direct impact. That's the type of work that I think will be in heaven.
Or even go broader, where it's like these glimpses in life. Like it's I don't know, going on a walk with your spouse, your significant other. Like sometimes, like when I come over 287, like, and I see the Front Range, the mountains, and it's like, just every time I'm like, oh gosh, like my smallness, God's bigness, this beauty, it's all there. Okay, I want to take a left turn because we sound very smart right now, and like, look at us, like, kind of thing. Okay, go back to 11-year-old Jesse. What did you think heaven was? Like the whole thing. So like, we have all these years of like knowledge and schooling and but like, what was like your original thought? And then I'm gonna ask you next, you too, Sean. Like, what was your original thought? Like, what is heaven all about?
Dude, do you remember the song Delirious, the band? So this is like church nerd time.
Yeah.
I could sing of your love forever.
One of the better songs ever written.
I enjoyed the song, but I remember just sitting there, like we're singing the song in youth group, and then we just keep on singing the song, and we keep on singing the song, and then I was like, I can sing of your love for about 3 minutes, and then I'm pretty bored with this. Like, I just want, like, can we do something else? And so I just remember going like, I'm going to be bored in heaven. Like this, it's going to be like legit clouds. I thought it's clouds. I think like God's going to be there. It's going to be cool. But like, I think I'm just going to be bored all the time. We're just going to be singing these songs that, like, am I even going to want to sing? And then I felt bad for myself for not wanting to sing these songs because I'm like, I'm supposed to be able to sing of your love forever, but I can't sing of your love forever. Like, it was, and so I just felt like it was going to be boring and I was going to have to do stuff I didn't want to do. And that's what heaven was.
Jeez. What about you, Sean?
I can just remember a time. First thing that popped in my head is I loved sports as a kid, and so playing sports. I remember, I think my mom said this to me one time. My friends that were playing soccer by the park by my house. You know, it starts getting dark. Hey, you got to go home. And my mom said like, hey, well, one day you'll be able to play forever. You know, it's just like, and so I think like
Your mom's the sweetest lady in the world, by the way.
She is.
She's
she's incredible.
Yeah.
But it's like, I think as a kid, I just thought like, oh, these things that like I want to do. And I think I just took that as like, there's no rules. There's like, I can play soccer for as long as I want to forever. But there is a part of that in it of just like, like these good things don't have to come to an end in eternity. You're right. Like we're limited in this box of time, but if we go into eternity, like there is no end to those things that bring us joy.
Yeah. That's wild, dude.
Carl, how about you?
So my relationship with God is just, it was a pretty authoritarian relationship. Like even as a kid, it was always like God's pissed off and he's like, so it was like, and my parents are immigrants. So it's like disciplining was different for us.
Tell
you know
us
what I mean?
about it.
Like, yeah. They're both passed away. So like definitely CPS would have been called to our house. Like that kind of situation. But like, so that's like,
why are we laughing?
yeah,
about
I
this
know,
at
sorry.
this
Like, but it's like
point?
this authoritarian thing. So I just was like, oh, God's just gonna be ticked off forever. Like we gotta sit there, and He's like, this, like you and I've been dumb enough to preach these same kind of things where it's like God's gonna review every moment of your life. That's terrifying.
Sure.
How long is it going to take? Let's say you live 80 years. We're going to do 80 years of this? Like, and then I got to sit in line and watch him do it to Jesse and then Sean and my kid. Like, so I was just like, I was so afraid of. I was so afraid of God. Like, I was so afraid of His judgment. Like, so it was always kind of this like, I don't want to do that. And then there was this sadness associated with it too, because people go to heaven when they die. Right?
Sure.
So it's like, I was like, oh, you get the best thing, but you got to do this hard thing. And you got to, so I think for me as a kid, it was just like, gosh, this doesn't sound very fun. Doesn't sound very exciting. And it just like, I don't know, it felt like an gift to me a little bit.
What's one of the things that you guys, when you think about heaven, like has been the biggest aha moment for you that most people wouldn't know?
Oof.
I think maybe, I don't know if this is answering your question or not. I think something that has given me a lot of peace, I think, is the amount of things that we probably won't know on this side of heaven. And I think for someone, I want to know everything and I want to try to figure everything out. And there are so many limits to that. And there's so many things that we'll never know here.
Sure.
I think that's there's things that we will not know this side of heaven. But but it's hard to say that without being a cop-out, if I'm being honest. Like, it feels like you're trying to explain away, like, well, we can't figure that out. But, like, the other side of it's, like, the reconciliation. Like, I think about C.S. Lewis talks about this idea that that eternity works both ways. So the idea that, like, we think of eternity as only moving forward, but when when heaven finally invades earth, we talk about the new heaven and the new earth, it doesn't just work forward, it works backwards. And he says that when we look back in our lives, even the most painful moments, we will be able to see heaven in them. Whereas if we don't choose God, we'll see hell in all those moments.
Yeah.
And it's like this interesting thing that God like goes back in time and redeems even the most painful parts of your life. And I can think back to, there's a lot of moments in my life where I wasn't dreaming about heaven. I didn't have time to think about, it was like I was so consumed by the pain that I was living in. And to think that one day I could look back on that time and see heaven in the midst of it is crazy to me.
Man,
Yeah.
that's really good.
I know we got to close up in a second. Like, I think the aha moment for me, like, honestly, was like last year. I've talked to you a lot about this, Jess, of like my mom passing away. But it was like, it was that last week of her life, like, the Celtic sort of theologians talk about like that thin space, like when life, this earth, this present,
Yep.
and,
Where it
and
feels
eternal
so thin.
feels so thin. And it was just gnarly being in my mom's, like, in the hospital room with her, because like the questions she was asking, the statements she was making seemed so profound and so honest, and because it was like she's so close.
Sure.
She's so close, and like it shifted in me. I've talked about this in other podcasts, but like it shifted in me like perspective of how I live since then, because I'm like, yeah, I'm not promised all of this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
Yes.
none of us are promised anything. Like today could be the last day of my life, of your life, you know, and it's like just to watch her in that space, it was this like, but then there was this like, she's sad because she's leaving us, her kids and her grandkids and her friends, but this joy of being with her creator. And it was like a tension point for me too, because I'm like, she's as happy, more happy to go see Jesus than she is sad to leave us.
Sure.
And it started to put into deeper perspective what that relationship's supposed to look like, what that relationship can look like when I'm just so in love with God, and now I get, you know, it's like
Right.
it's this Christmas morning anticipation. So yeah, that for me, that kind of like, how do I live? how do I live in that thin space?
Sure. Sure.
You know, in just in my daily walk, where it's like, God, I want to be so close to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I feel like the guys who I admire who are finishing well, you know, like they're in their 60s, 70s, and you can just tell they're thinking about less of what they can do for God and more like, can they just spend time with God? And I think that might be something that comes with age, but it's something that I've started to think through. Like the biggest aha for me was just like, you've had these moments where you've been so enraptured by something that it's like time just stands still, because I'm like, whether it's like a moment with my kids or a moment with Kara, or if it's just like a moment in general, and it's like time stands still. And it's like, when you take away all the brokenness of sin, when you take away all the brokenness of this world, and like we can actually comprehend God's glory, like wouldn't we just be able to sit there and just go like, I could just sit here all day.
Yeah.
Like I could just stay here all day. And it's like, I got so many questions. Like we've all got the questions we want to ask God. When I get to heaven, I'm going to ask this, and this. And at the same time, like, I wonder if we're just going to get there and like, we'll still have those questions, but it'll just be like, I don't think this actually matters right now. Like what matters is this moment. And so that for me is like, rather than just thinking I'm going to be bored, like I think just looking at like, no, I think I'm just going to be enraptured by the presence of Jesus. And then the conviction for this life, similar to what you were saying, is how can I create thin space moments in my own life where like I'm trying to pull some of that down? Because again, that's what we started off talking about. It's like, if we have that anticipation and that vision of what it could look like in eternity, trying to pull that into earth and going like, no, I'm going to try to spend moments in my day focusing on who Jesus is, how I can feel close to him, rather than like, I'll get to heaven, I'll get to eternity when I die. But at the same time, like, I'm just not going to think about it. And so I think it profoundly affects what we're doing today. But I think that's all the time we've got for today. I know we've got another one of these dropping next week. And so, guys, thanks for listening, and appreciate you guys just tracking with us. We're loving the series, and we'll catch you here next week.